who's here this morning.
Yes.
Any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Morgan. Any discussion? Second by Kamal. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Tina, do we have any written comments to the committee this week or this meeting?
No, we have not received any written comments. I have two callers out here. Callers, if you would like to speak, please press *3 on your phone and then I will unmute you. Okay, I see no hands raised. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. And Paul, you're on deck to do a presentation.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to do a follow-up. Let me share my screen. If you'd, yep, there we are. I wanted to do a follow-up on the compactness measures that I sent out after our last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Right. Clean things up here a little bit. All right. Yeah. So the application I used to do the actual redistricting or boundary changes and assess population, it's by our GIS vendor, ESRI, has some tools to measure the compactness of districts. And there's actually several. And if you went through some of the links or materials that I shared, you'll notice that there are a few. Of the set, I chose two: the Polsby-Popper test and the Grafmann test. As I mentioned, the Polsby-Popper test seems to be used frequently among other redistricting efforts to measure compactness. Then I chose the Grafmann test because it's a method that I'm familiar with for other uses in terms of measuring the kind of irregularity of areas of things we call polygons, which these districts that we're looking at kind of a high level, they're called polygons. I don't want to dive too much in here unless there are questions, but I did want to mention that in my spreadsheet here, I pointed out District 1 of the initial 5 districts seeing a big change in the level of compactness. I just want to make sure that you're aware of what I was talking about there. So you'll recall that District 1 had this really jaggy line down here on the south end of Vancouver Lake. We talked about that last time about making a change to this boundary to follow Lake River here. But this jaggy boundary provides a nice example of how the compaction scores react to something like this. So if we look at District 1 here and this very jaggy line and the numbers, we see, for the Polsby-Popper, see a very low score, 0.19, whereas I think here in the higher the better. I think with this one, the best score is a 1. That's most compact. Then as and also with the Grafmann, you want a lower score to be more compact, and this has actually the highest score of everything. Then as we move into alternative A, B, and C, the scores become more in line with others. And meaning that as we move to alternative A, as that comes up, oh, there we go, right. We change to this boundary, it's much smoother, and the scores settle settle down and become a little bit more reasonable. Now, of course, if we had kept the boundary, kept the boundary, along the south edge of the shore, that would have been, because that's a natural feature, that would have been reasonable to keep, but it just provides a nice example of looking at the scores. I think
Well, Paul, thank you for that. How would you summarize this? Would you summarize it by saying all three plans are about equally compact, but alternative B is the most slightly more compact than the other two?
that sounds reasonable. Yeah, alternative B came out on top, and that was kind of our visual assessment as well.
Any questions for Paul from the committees on this topic?
Yeah, I was wondering, so like, it seems like if you go with more compact, then B becomes the winner, right? But so what would be getting closer to the population target or being compact, what would be the higher priority? I would imagine, just reading through the list, that population was at the top, and then the next one was compactness, and they all said shall and
Right.
some vague language. So it looks like you got to flip a coin, or
Yeah, looking at the RCW, I don't know if it really gave a priority to one particular. I know we've certainly paid a lot to the population. As we still, the populations were very, very close as well, of the various alternatives.
Can I say
Well, I'm
something?
sorry, I didn't quite hear your comment or question.
right. So I just kind of wanted to see, we got like two competing options here. It looks like to go more compact, we can go with alternative B, but to get the population closer in, we can go with A, right? Reading the specifications on what needs to be done, it's got population shall be this, that you should get as close as possible. And then also, the compactness had basically the same type of wording, right? So
Right.
how do you decide, or does it matter, right?
Okay, so you're talking about the population variance. So Paul, are you showing us the population variance of the three plans?
I'm looking for it right now. It's,
Can I interrupt while he's looking?
yeah, certainly.
In preparing for this meeting, I went back to reading what the charter says about our committee. And basically, it says that the redistricting master shall draw a redistricting plan for the county and submit it to the committee for adoption. So I know you didn't want to do this before, and I know we've gone around and looked at some other stuff, but basically it's your job to pick the plan that you want to submit. And I looked at the previous meeting, I hadn't seen the maps, so I wasn't able to comment on them. But when you look at A and C, you can't really follow the boundaries for the city of Vancouver, because when the precincts were made, they were made very sharply for the 164th being the boundary. So all the precincts start there. And so you can't get a smooth looking line. And so you're not doing just the city of Vancouver when you look at the other maps. They go into Camas. And I also looked at the map that the Republicans proposed. And to me, it looks like they gerrymandered the district because they didn't like where all their current county councilors lived. I thought it was done partly on the population, the residences of where certain people lived. And that shouldn't be a factor.
So Janet, I appreciate your referencing back to the charter, and yeah, absolutely. It does ask Paul, the redistricting master, to submit a plan. I guess from my own view, it's not unreasonable for the redistricting master to seek the input from the committee members in developing that plan. I also don't think it's unreasonable for us to express our preference for a plan to Paul, and then he can then in turn give that back to us for our final approval. But interesting what other people have to have their thoughts on that as well. I mean, I guess my view is
Can I, Greg,
if
can I
it's just,
throw
if we
a
just
point of
solely, if we just say, Paul, go create a plan out of the blue without any input from the committee, I don't think that's all that productive.
Yeah, agreed.
Greg, can I ask for just a point of clarification? When we're talking just about the cities, we can't use like addresses that are included. We should instead be using the lines that are on the maps that Paul provided. So from what I see, and from what I know, because I happen to live on the very edge where I'm in the Camas School District, but within the city of Vancouver for voting purposes, the dark, and maybe Paul, you could pull up the map, and show the dark lines are the city limits, right? It's not necessarily driven by streets but the precincts can't cross from the city of Vancouver to the city of Camas, can they? That would be, so that was my question.
A precinct has to be wholly contained within cities and towns, just as it has to be wholly contained within council districts and legislative districts and congressional districts. Morgan, did you have another comment?
No, I think, as far as I could tell, both maps A and C did not cross over outside of the city of Vancouver. In fact, both of them had small portions of the city of Vancouver they didn't include because from what I can tell, it wouldn't be possible to do the balancing of the population well with including all of Vancouver in District 3.
So is your point, Morgan, that it's
No, I just was clarifying. I think Janet said that it was crossing into Camas, and I don't think that that's accurate.
but also I think well, maybe I take away from your comment that it's difficult to include all of the city in these districts, or to use city boundaries in defining these council district boundaries. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, and I can even follow up with a little more detail, which was, at the end of the last meeting, I asked Paul if he'd be open to some tweaks. I attempted to do some tweaks to try to include all of Vancouver in these maps and couldn't get to a situation where the population was as balanced as any of the three maps that we have without making pretty significant changes that didn't feel warranted. Also, as a total side note, when doing that, I also found that I think it was noted at the last meeting that Plan A has the lowest difference from the target population, but it's actually Plan B. I mean, the difference is 12 people, but if you add up the absolute value of all the difference, B is slightly closer to the target population.
Let me chime in
Paul,
there.
you had that really nice summary of those population variances, a little spreadsheet.
Okay.
You weren't able to find that, huh?
Not yet. Let me, that was the one with the chart, right?
It was on the bottom of one of the charts. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me.
Probably I bet
I
it's
was
an
kind
email.
of geared up for the compactness and left population of the desk. So let me keep looking for that.
All right.
Yeah, I was just going with A. If we did just a minor change, then we'd all be right about 100 or so, or less. Where, I mean, I know what you're saying for the entire, it would be B, but it's not just for the entire. It's to get everybody to be really close to each other.
Yeah.
And I mean really close.
You only need to move one precinct from District 5 to District 3 to balance it all out.
You know what? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me?
So.
Which is, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Better microphone.
So could we get
Okay.
Paul to explain how he drew map B and C? I mean, what went into his thinking when he drew those two?
Sure. Let me share again.
And Paul, while you're doing that, I'll look at that email.
Hey, thank you. All right. Let's see. Zoom out here a bit. So, so this is the initial 5.
Mhm.
And when I came up with alternative B, my main intent was to keep its theme, keep its really changes to a minimum, but still reach the population or the goal of balancing the population. So, and recall that, yeah, District 5 was had like 5,000 or so too many people, above target initially. So yeah, we had to move. So they moved some of the boundaries along District 5, but yeah, in a nutshell, it keeps the same. Tried to keep the same intent, the same. People looked at alternative B. They wouldn't see anything. I don't think too many eyebrows be raised.
So does it also, is it the closer drawing to what the voters voted on?
Yes. Or at least to what the Charter Review Commission put forward.
Okay.
And again, yeah, district, what I'm calling the initial 5 districts. This is what the Charter Review Commission put forward. And then I in creating alternative B, I tried to keep the intent or the basic shapes the same.
Well, just to clarify that, yes, it's what the Charter Review Commission put forward for the voters to consider. It appeared on the ballot, and the voters, at the very large majority, approved that plan that the Charter Review Commissioners put forward. So it's the voter-approved plan.
Mhm. With alternative C, so Janet, does that make sense?
That makes sense on B.
Okay, good. Let me talk about C. With C, I kind of went, I felt a little inspired by alternative A, seeing that it tried to incorporate more Vancouver. And that's also, looking at the RCW, trying to keep communities together. I moved the boundary of District 3 east towards Camas. I did not get the entire city of Vancouver, but I started by moving this east, and then that of course shifted population. So I had to kind of went around counterclockwise to rebalance the remaining districts. But yeah, the main intent of alternative C was to move this boundary eastward to loop in more of eastern Vancouver. In that, this is zooming in here. We see this right on the city boundary, on the northern edge here of 3. That looks fine now, but I'm sure there will be annexations up here. I mean, not that it really plays into the, well, I'm not sure if it really plays into the RCWs at all, but I think a point I made last time is that, this boundary, 10 years from now, people are going to wonder, why is this boundary so jaggy here? Because I imagine Vancouver will shift or will annex areas. But again, that's not really something we factor in right now. Any questions on that?
Makes sense.
So is there, and I'm not, Paul, I'm not quickly pulling up that summary. I was trying to do it from a spreadsheet you sent, but it'll take more time than I want to spend right now. But,
Yeah.
I guess we could add them up from the maps. Other discussions, or Paul, did you have anything else you wanted to present?
Not at this time. Other than I'll mention that I did, or I still need to take care of this little tail here up by, Lake River. I still need to correct that from the approval from the last meeting, but that's just a minor point.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Ooh.
Well, members of the committee, where do we go from here?
Mhm. You already know I'm standing pat with alternative A.
I mean, I've liked B even before I looked at all the other maps, just from the way how compact it looked and how much it mirrors what the Charter Commission put forth to the voters. And it looks the best. I mean, if you're trying to like have a map somewhere in the county or elsewhere online for people to look, it's the one that looks more like states than all these kind of squiggly lines.
Well, what about the population? You should be trying to balance that out.
Yeah, well, right now,
The population should be as close to the target as possible.
I know.
And B doesn't reflect that.
I like the idea of cutting Vancouver stuff. That seems like to be a big issue, right? Vancouver split into 2 districts.
no, Vancouver's in 3 districts.
Alleviate that,
Mhm.
Well, even if we adopt alternative A or alternative C, we don't include all of Vancouver. We could include 99% of Vancouver, but we weren't able to get the entire city included. And I guess actually, and that's ignoring the area that's in District 2. That's ignoring all of that.
And I guess I'd make a comment that I think as Paul said, or someone said, while we're not really, it's not our role to predict what's going to happen in the future. The City of Vancouver boundaries will be changing over the next I think actually it's not unreasonable to say that it could change pretty significantly over the next few years.
So I guess I'll just throw it out there, see what happens. I move for the committee to Plan B as our draft plan going forward to submit to them.
Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
Discussion.
No, we still stay.
I like Plan B. It's what the voters approved. It has, it's the most compact. I think the population variances are very, very acceptable. And for me, maybe the biggest part of my rationale is that it is what the voters we just certified the election a week and a half ago, so it's what the voters just saw and approved. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with Plan B. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
I mean, I'd like to,
Go ahead, Mark.
I just would like to say part of my reasoning, which is that I do think that while we can get a closer population balance by making small changes to map A, we are talking about very small differences overall in the population difference. Like we're talking about less than 0.5% of what we were shooting for. And I think it would have been reasonable I think we talked about 1% as being a threshold at one point earlier on in the process. And so I think when that's included as a factor, being interested in compactness as an additional factor, and the fact that we won't be able to include all communities of interest within the boundaries, it is kind of on balance the strongest plan. I think they're all strong plans. I don't think any of them are weak, but I think it's the strongest.
Hey, Greg, this is Amanda, just for the record, before we move any further, I just want to clarify what the motion was, and unfortunately I don't remember the specific language. At this point, the committee can't fully adopt the plan. There has to be a public hearing for that. So the motion should really be for, I guess, a motion for Paul to submit, which plan B at this point, to the committee for adoption. And I'm sorry if that was what the motion was, but I just want to clarify that that is the motion.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. No, I think what we've been referring to it as the draft plan to submit to the committee or to
Okay.
submit to the public.
Okay,
A fair point that it's going to come to us through Paul, the redistricting master. Is that was that your motion, Morgan?
Yes.
And Janet, you seconded that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank-
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Amanda.
So Greg, we're not gonna let the public see all the different variations at all?
No, the public will be presented with the plan that's adopted by this committee as the draft plan. This committee will not present multiple plans to the public. This committee is charged with presenting this committee is charged with agreeing on a plan and then presenting that agreed on plan, draft plan, to the public. That's that's the way it's set forth in a charter and which follows state law. So it's incumbent upon us to I guess technically to agree upon a plan to submit to Paul to submit back to us or to submit to the public.
Thank you for that clarification. That's kind of what I thought I was hearing, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Juan, haven't heard a comment from you, or Kamal, any comments, any other discussion of the motion?
I don't agree with the motion at all, Greg. Especially when I know, Morgan, what you just said about the figures there, but mine was obviously a lot more closer. But
Yours a lot more what, Kamal?
My figures were a lot more closer than the other two alternatives. So that's fine.
Morgan, do you have a spreadsheet showing how you arrived at that?
So sure, I can pull something up. So this one is not. So I also did just the math of adding up the numbers here, but I can't share screen.
I bet Tina can allow you to share a screen, or maybe I can. I don't know. Tina, are you still there?
No, I can now. Thanks.
Cool.
So can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's not right. Just made a change. Check to make sure it's the right column. So, Well, this is the problem with doing it yourself. So this is where we were at when we looked at the plans that had just come up. And so what I'm seeing is a difference of 1500 in map A and a difference of 1396 in map B. In terms of the absolute value difference between the two. When I added it up by hand, it did come out differently. So I'm thinking that there is something different going on in there's something about the way that I'll do the calculation that's showing the map that's more accurate than mine. But when I did it by hand, the difference was still this. The difference in A was 1407 absolute difference, and B was 1395. So a huge change one way or the other. And then these are just the absolute value differences, and then this is a variance and standard deviation, which are probably not the most exciting things in the world to see. But I think, you know, even if we made the change on 612 is the one we discussed, switching it from 5 to 3, that's why it was off. That lowers the difference down to 522. Because we get big changes in districts 3 and 5, but that does create kind of a weird map, and I think distinction boundary wise, because one of the nice advantages of District A, or of the kind of all of the maps, is that we are following roads, and that change does move away from following roads.
But again, it looked like you were just taking the absolute value of each deviation and adding it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the deviation was computed by the
Excel calculation, so it's not super fancy.
well, yeah, right, but it's the deviation is the difference between the population of the alternative and the ideal or the target.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
My whole thing is just getting closer to that ideal for everybody. Then two, we get some communities that are staying together from the change that was brought on by the voters, right? They're not moving, they're not shifting, and yet we get closer to a population. Literally, if you look at it now, even our plan is like 1,300 off, right? One to the other.
Yeah.
Well, and I will point out that the charter also requires a 2/3 vote of this committee to take action. And so there's 5 of us. It takes 4 votes to move stuff forward. So any other discussion of the motions on the table? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote. And this is kind of a formal deal, so I'm going to go around to each person, ask them to signify aye or nay or yes or no. So I'll start with Morgan. Morgan, do you vote aye or yes with on the motion on the table?
I vote aye.
Juan? Kamal?
Nay.
Nay. Janet?
Yay. Yes, for Morgan's motion.
And I'll vote, I vote yay as well. So that's 3-2, the motion fails, and we are exactly where I was fearful we would be.
But doesn't
So-
it go back to Paul? He still has to come, he has to decide, because he has to put forth a plan. He's heard the comments.
Yes, he does.
Well, Greg, I do want to clarify. So under section 6.6 for the redistricting plan of the redistricting committee. So once there is a plan submitted, the committee shall conduct a public hearing at least 1 week before the proposed adoption. The committee shall then adopt the redistricting plan within 30 days of submission. The plan shall be adopted as submitted or as amended by 2/3 majority of the redistricting committee. Upon adoption, the plan shall be filed with the council by the redistricting committee. After submission, the council shall have 30 calendar days to amend, et cetera, et cetera. So, the 2/3 doesn't need to occur. So 2/3 would require 4 people to vote in favor of any plan once it's submitted and once after you've had the public hearing. So the 2/3 at this point, in theory, is premature, based on the language of the charter. So
Yeah.
at this point, it is up to you all to determine to move forward with it with a majority and then allowing for public hearing and determining at that point, moving forward with it or amending it, et cetera. That part is up to you, but at this point right now, you do not need to have the 4 members.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I guess I was trying to move this along more quickly than necessary, because my assumption is the plan we're going to take to the public, to the public committee, to the public hearing, but public meeting, eventually is going to have 4 votes. So if Paul presents a plan to us that clearly only 3 members approve, the likelihood of, or I say the possibility of that plan ultimately getting 4 votes is questionable. But thank you again for that clarification. And yes, and Janet, thank you for you're pointing out that it is the responsibility of the redistricting master to give us a plan. And so I guess if it's the desires of this committee, we could, on majority vote, ask Paul to present a plan to us that's lines up with Plan B, and then take that to the public. Paul comes back to us with Plan B. We take that to the public. We get the public's input. We then reconvene, and we hope we can get, well, I hope we can get 4 votes to approve a plan after the public committee.
Because
meeting.
if we don't, doesn't it go to county council?
That's not set forth in law. I suspect that is what happens, though. I mean, yeah. Amanda, do you have a comment on that?
Not much more than what you've already said, Greg. Unfortunately, the charter is pretty silent over what happens with if the redistricting committee can't agree. And so it just that they have 30 days. Once it's been submitted, there's 30 days to adopt the plan. So that I guess could be another factor as far as your next step at this point. So it starts a 30-day time clock to accept something, to vote on something, or adopt something, sorry, is what I'm trying to spit out.
Yep. Yeah, so I was hope, so again, maybe premature on my part, but I was hoping we could get 4 votes now and move this thing along. 4 votes on a plan, on a draft plan that we would take to the public, get their input, and then adopt and present to the council. However, here we are with the motion to have a draft plan that reflects that Plan B has failed. So with that, what's the pleasure of the committee?
So Kamal, is there something that we could do to this particular plan that would make it more acceptable?
We can, Paul, you can go back and maybe do up something different and bring it back to the committee. But as you can see, we're all in with A.
Do you have a reason for why you wouldn't support if let's say B had the exact same difference in population, would you support it, or would you still support A instead?
We'll have to see what it looks like. If Paul, we bring that back, I'll take a look and we'll see.
So what I can do is I'd like to replicate the Morgan's method of kind of comparing the overall difference in population, kind of taking the absolute value of all the differences or all the deviations, and then kind of with that as a measure, start to look at some of the some fine tuning that could happen.
Start moving the
Is that what I'm hearing?
boundary of District 3 over to the east, I guess. I mean, it's got 639 people in it, so.
Would you say that again?
Yeah, that northeast boundary up on District 3. Again, to move that east. And
Of which of alternative B?
no, alternatives A, I'm sorry. So,
Okay.
you know, Morgan was saying, you know, let's get more compact and let's get, you know, population doesn't really matter how far off it is, then we can start moving that northeast boundary east. And
Okay, so this area here?
yeah, because I mean, that district's got 639, right? If it sucks it in from District 4, it would shrink District 4, but then it's just, you're just flipping the negative over. Right? And then it'd be more compact. It'd be...
Okay, so really, this is kind of an S curve here on alternative A, looking to straighten that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for me, I appreciate Morgan's question to Kamal.
Mhm.
What changes would you need to see to Plan B to adopt that as our draft plan?
Even with Morgan saying that the figures are below 1%. Again, I know that there was the I don't know if the RCW said this. It says something about the numbers need to be as closely as possible to the population targets, and that is what A presents. You see, and so that's where I'm at. So if you can beat out A, Paul, then that's good.
That was my question earlier on. I mean, we got two competing notions, right? Compactness and population. For me, that population getting as close as possible being is kind of a level of compactness.
So what I'm hearing is a preference by some members of the committee for the plan the voters recently approved. And then I'm also hearing a high value placed on getting the population variances as small as possible. Is that
Right.
fair?
There's we've got a couple of these criteria use the kind of the phrasing of as close as possible. I mean, there's well, maybe I've got it here.
Close as possible. That means that we have to make a decision on what the priority is.
All right.
What was that one?
To me, as close as possible on both entries means that, you know, you have to be, you got to pick one, right? One or the other.
Yeah.
It's going to drive the other, right? For me, number one is population because that gets really close and keeps people together that have already been together. Where compactness kind of tends to shift things, breaks that population.
Mhm.
All right, so can people see my screen? I've
Mhm.
got a copy of the RCW here. There's the, population is nearly equal as possible, compact as possible, contiguous right there.
So Paul, I mean, ideally, if you could do it right now on the fly, it'd be cool, but what could you do to Plan B to bring those population variances even smaller than they are currently?
Yeah, well, I could, specifically, I can't offer an answer right now. I'd have to dive into it following this meeting and go from there.
I mean, it's, I understand the challenge. And I really appreciate this committee's, willingness so far to, and I'm going to say, respect existing precinct boundaries. When we're talking about 620 above a target and 428 below a target, and average precinct size is over 1,000.
Mm.
Yeah, well over 1,000. It's a tough challenge for Paul to accomplish what I just asked, or to get the population variance even smaller than it is currently in Plan B.
Greg, is splitting a precinct an option?
I guess if that's what it took to get 4 votes, we would do that.
Mm.
Well, some of those precincts are really large, and aren't they going to split at some point in time?
Yep. Yeah. If there's well, actually, that's not true. There's population is much larger than 1,000. It's what's 500,000, 520,000 divided by 238? It's whatever that number is. It's yeah. The rule is if you have more than 1,500 registered voters, active voters in a precinct, you have to split it.
Well, you have some that have 2,500 currently.
That's population, not voters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So average population is 2,200 people. That's average. So to be, I guess.
Yeah, I just did a quick count. Now the average is about 1,489. You can see that the median is 1,500. So this is kind of overall. This is the stats, population stats for all the precincts in the county. These 2 lines.
Yeah. So I guess we're kind of stuck here with a desire to have. Morgan, could you throw up your population variance analysis again?
Sure. Can I get the access to share again?
It seems like that's the primary topic this morning.
Compare them all together.
So Morgan, you've got a few additional alternatives. You've got a D and an E. Is that?
Those are just, so that's like just a copy of A and B, attempting to tweak them. So
Oh, I see.
You'll see the numbers are the exact same.
Yeah.
So if I made changes, I didn't lose what was already in A and B. So yeah, D is B and E is A. Because we're not talking about C.
Oh, there you've got the initial map too. So, okay. Looks like your column C is the initial 5.
Yeah, I just didn't calculate
Okay,
the
good.
price. I can copy it in.
So on your, could I see the, when you have a moment, could you highlight F3 and see what you're doing there?
F3?
Okay, so E3 minus, yeah, okay. So there you've hard coded the target of, right, of 100,662. Okay. Yeah. So that's the so that's the deviation, and then on your, and then would you highlight K3 as well? Then the same thing. Right, right. So it's the same target for each map. Yeah. So,
So,
and
but
then-
what map A, is that the original? That's the
No,
approved map?
map A is what we're calling alternative plan A. So that is Samal and
Okay. And what's map B? Map
B is our alternative B. D is a copy of B that I was going to use to make any tweaks so that I didn't lose the original data from map B.
And
then E is the same for A.
okay, you don't have map C on there then. Okay. Or the original plan. Okay.
or you hit it, it looks like.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can unhide.
That's all right. That's all right. It seems like we're only talking about B and A, or yeah, B and A.
It's like I can hide these also just to, so we're keeping it simple.
561.
And then where do we see the total deviation of all the entire map? It's not 1,500. It's
Yeah, that's these added together, but it's an absolute value.
okay. And then for map A, it's okay. No, okay. So that shows deviation is 1396 for map B and deviation of 1,500 for map A.
Yeah, that's why I had the other ones up. So let's just so if we want to look at map E, because that was the plan, which 612. Is that correct, Small? You wanted to move 612 to 3, is that right?
That was 612. I think it would go from 5 to 3. And that would shrink it even more with my alternative.
So yeah, so map E is the updated version of A that has 612 in District 3 instead of District 5.
Okay. But map A with the total variation distance from target is 1,500. Map B 1396 distance from target. Map B has, I'm going to interpret that as closer to equal population of the districts than map A, right? And then you've
Yes.
No, 1 plus 600 and the other one's negative 600, so 600 and some. We're just proposing if you move 612, then it makes it, they're within 100 of each other. One's
well, I'm looking at the total map. I'm not looking at individual precincts. If I look at the total map A, total map B, the total variance is less on map B than map A. Am I correct in that?
Without the change to 612.
without the change.
Correct.
Right. So the starting point.
Right, but we're just looking at 3 and 5, right? So 3 was like negative something, and then 5 was plus 600. So they were just basically, mirror images of each other.
Yeah.
So if we flip
So
612.
so you're focused on a variance on a specific district, not the entire map. Is that right?
Right. Right. So if we look at the variance on all of them, they're like minus 59, I think, and minus something and plus something, right? That was within 100. But
Yeah.
then you look at 3 and 5, and they're plus 600, I think, for 5, and minus 600 people in 3. So
Mhm.
if we just add 612 to 3, then that brings the variance on those two to within about 100,
Mhm.
plus or minus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then all over the map, it'll be a lot tighter because now the numbers are tighter
Yeah.
as far as total variance.
Is that something you can do now, Paul?
In terms of, I'd
Just
rather
with
not.
that one precinct or something?
Let's see. Right now I'm coming up with my own spreadsheet, kind of go along with what Morgan's making.
I could also send you this, I guess.
Yeah, Morgan could, let's see, map A, District 150.
Yeah, like I said initially, there is something off about the numbers. I don't know why,
Yeah.
because it's just got the spreadsheet that you sent us, Paul. The one
Yeah.
that's doing this calculation, it's off by what's that, 93? Like one precinct or something is got the
On the
population
precincts,
wrong here.
the precinct level. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know that could be kind of chalk it up as a rounding error of sorts, but let me finish the thought here. My spreadsheet.
well, let me,
deviation.
so what I understand is that Kamal and Juan are advocating for Plan A with moving this one precinct, is it 612,
Use 612.
from District 3 to District 5. Is that,
That's correct.
do I understand that?
612.
I'm sorry. No. It goes from District 5 to District 3.
Yes.
Right. Other way around.
Precinct 612 from 5 to 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Taking a look here.
Well,
I'll go ahead and share my screen here just to, I can give you a visual on this if that's helpful.
yeah, thanks, Paul.
Okay. I often thought that 911 dispatchers are the masters of multitasking, but this is a new test, new category. So I'm selecting precinct 612.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Well, Paul, let me ask this question.
Mhm.
Are you making that change to B? You're making that change to alternative B?
Oh, well, I mean, what are we making it to? It's
That would have to be for A.
Right.
Okay, how? So you'd be moving, again, that's from 5 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because that's 600 below.
Mhm.
Okay. I guess I'm confused. An earlier direction was looking at how to,
Like B.
That was, and see, that's why Paul, you're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and figure that out, because that's not gonna work for A. It won't work. That was only for alternative A.
Well, so yeah, I thought we were talking about
B, no.
Plan A and moving that precinct into it.
That's correct, Greg. That is correct.
Yeah.
so where are we again?
So in Plan A, taking precinct 612
Mhm.
and removing it from District 5
Hmm.
and inserting it into District 3.
And that's, let me double check the population on that.
20, right?
Six twelve, 830 people
Mhm.
approximately.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's correct.
So I see that would, let me just state the obvious, so that would further equalize these two districts.
Mhm.
How does that help us get closer to agreement?
Well, I was wondering if you went back to B.
Mhm.
There's a precinct near 205 that you put in District 2. Because the line kind of jags over.
Do you have the number?
643.
Okay.
I think. It has 2,000 people.
I didn't know if we could jag it a little bit, tweaking 2, maybe going up, and 3 getting a little bit more there. I don't know.
You could switch 643 and 636, and that would give District 2 an extra 400 people or so, and subtract 400 people from District 3.
Which precincts would you like to see highlighted?
643 and 636.
Are they next to each other, or?
They're like north and south of each other.
Okay. What was the second one?
636, or is it looking? Yeah, 636.
636.
Yep.
All right. Oh, these guys. All right. Make this a little lighter. So switching those from 3 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it change District 3's population?
Yes, but District 3's population is 620 above, and District 2's population is 400 below. So it'll flip it to District 3 being below, and I think District 2 being above.
Well, actually, both
Or no?
both precincts have pretty high numbers, 2,000 and 2,400 people.
Yeah, but they're close to each other. So I think what it would do would flip District
Oh,
2's
I see
population.
what you're doing. I see.
Same thing we're trying to do. With
I see. So you're talking about, really, you're talking about 400, right? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what you're asking are some variations of these alternatives based on these precincts that you're giving me, variation on alternative A and a variation on alternative B.
That's fine. Yeah, yes, fine, Paul.
Yeah, I think the hope would be that we can try to, I guess, get as low of a variance as possible on population.
Okay. All right, so I have two, I'm seeing two I'm being requested to ask or to make 2 different changes.
Mhm.
And I can do those outside of a meeting and then come back and present or really share the results with you via email as soon as possible.
Mhm.
And then will we just meet again on Wednesday?
Yeah,
Yes,
we already have that scheduled, correct?
yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Also, Paul, if there's some other way of tweaking them that you
Mhm.
see, then go ahead and do that as well.
Okay. Can do.
So do we have kind of agreed on requests to Paul on these 2 Plan B and Plan A, moving precinct 612 from 5 to 3,
Mhm.
and then moving
And
switching
Greg,
these 2.
And Greg, the change you just repeated there is for alternative A.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Sorry, Paul.
And then
Yeah.
for alternative B, precinct 643 and 636 basically swap. So there's a change of about 400.
Morgan, that's your, yep. And then
That was my suggestion.
and then Janet, you added in to request to Paul that do
If
you
he
have
sees
other ideas?
anything else that can get it even closer when he's tweaking and moving
Right.
these around, that then present that as well.
Yeah. All right.
Because the goal is trying to get the population more equal if it's possible.
And Paul, can you think you can get that done in advance of Wednesday's meeting and send it out to us?
Yes.
And Paul, can you create a maybe a tool that will allow us to look at these population variances a little bit more succinctly?
Yeah. I'll create a spreadsheet modeled after Morgan's that shows the deviations
Okay.
and summarizing the absolute value of those deviations.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else for the good of the order? Well, if not, I think we are scheduled for a meeting this Wednesday morning at 8:30 again, right?
Mhm.
Is it 8:30?
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. If there's nothing for the good of the order, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Look forward to seeing you on Wednesday morning.
Good. Cool.
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you, Paul.